Hello, thank you so very, very much for tuning in to a very awesome time here with Real Solutions. I am your host, Anna Aquino, and I am very honored to have the amazing New York Times bestselling author, Margaret Peterson Haddix. Thank you so much for agreeing to do the show.
Sure. I'm happy to do it.
I was going through your website yesterday going, oh my goodness, I'm just so blessed. I've been personally a huge fan. My kids are huge fans, and so it was a real honor when she agreed to do the show. So how did, I read your bio online, and everyone, I just truly believe that everyone has a story. Everyone has a path to find their 10 in life and what the good Lord created them to do. So how did you find your 10?
Well, that's funny because I've been thinking, I'm working on a book right now, and I've been thinking, everybody has multiple stories.
They
and
do.
and it actually, there are multiple ways that I can tell you the story of how I became a writer. I do feel like it was definitely something that I was maybe called to do, and partly I have to credit my parents and my grandparents and people who read to me and told me stories when I was a kid, because that definitely shaped my interest, and had a lot of teachers who were very great about encouraging me to read and then also to write. Um, because I knew that it's a hard thing to break into, when I went to college, I studied both journalism and creative writing,
Good for
which
you.
my husband kind of laughs at, because he's like, in journalism, it really isn't a good thing to say that you're good at making up stories, which he's right about. But I say, I knew the difference. I understood
Yes.
what I did for the newspaper was not
Yes.
fiction, and what I wrote on the side was fiction.
Right.
But so I started out as a newspaper reporter at the Indianapolis News, unfortunately a newspaper which no longer exists. And that was really good experience for me. It just is such good preparation to talk to people a lot and talk to lots of different people and hear lots of different perspectives and come to understand a lot of different people's stories. And then also it was great experience in terms of writing
Sure.
experience, and writing on deadline and not being able to say, I just don't feel like it today. My
Very true.
editors would not have accepted that.
No, they wouldn't have.
Right.
I always tell people that writing is a job. You have to set your time, whatever that looks like for you. You have to set your time aside, and pending all earthly shattering things, you're writing. I loved in your bio, you were talking about typing really, really quiet when your children were taking naps, because
Right.
I could so relate. It's just, I loved that. I
The things you
totally,
do as a parent of young
yes.
children, right?
Yes, I understood, Ninja Mom, that you are. That was really cool. Now, I am a personal huge fan of the Missing series, and I find myself a lot of times suggesting them to parents, to homeschool moms, to read, because one thing I love about your books, even though they are secular, you know that I can suggest one of your books and know that I will not have to apologize for a scene that's inappropriate. I will not have to apologize for words. I can say, go read a Haddix book, and it will be completely fine for people's children. So do you feel like that's, I can look at that as a parent and say, oh my goodness, that's so unique. Do you realize how unique that is?
I
The
do,
industry.
because I do hear that from people quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're not familiar with the Missing series, go out and read it, even if you are an adult, because I'm a self-proclaimed history nerd, history geek, and these are just a great series. Do you want to explain that series to people?
Sure. It begins with a very odd scene where an airplane lands at an airport where it is not supposed to be. And of course, the people at the airport are a little bit concerned about that, because that is not what's supposed to happen. And they try to get in touch with the pilot. There's no answer. Somebody walks onto the plane and discovers there's not a pilot, there's not a crew, there's not a single adult on the entire plane. There are just 36 babies. And I pretty much take up the whole book, having the kids 13 years later figuring out what that plane was doing there and where it came from and who those babies were. And then the rest of the series is a time travel series, and they get to go back to various time periods ranging from the 1400s to, in the last book, they actually get to go to the future. Because if you've got the power of time travel, why
Why
not?
not? I haven't read the last one, I have to admit to you. I just, personally, I hadn't gotten to it yet, and then I realized it was there, and my oldest daughter, who's 15, and I were like, oh my goodness, there's another one. So, very cool. It goes.
Well, I think threw a lot of people off with that one because the original plan was for there to be only 7 books in the series, and that was the word that went out so much. Then there are a lot of people who are like, wait, what? There's an 8?
Yeah. Yes, it's such a good series. I asked my kids before I kicked them out of the house to go play down the street. I said, "Is there anything you would like me to ask her?" Because they're such huge fans. And my oldest daughter said, "Ask her when the movie rights are coming out.
Oh.
Ask her when the movie rights are coming out." I said, "Sweetie." So can you talk about that?
I can, and unfortunately, the reason is because there's nothing concrete going on right now. There has been interest in the past, that it's been optioned before, but so far it hasn't gone anywhere.
Yes,
which happens a lot.
It does.
Talk to other people.
It
That's
does.
a very common thing.
It is, and let me just say, dear Hollywood industry or independent film companies, please, you want this series because it is so fun and it is so outside of the box. I was just in the juvenile fiction section of our local library, and I was going, Haddix, because I can go to your books. I mean, I know I just said that, but I can go to your books and know they're okay. They're good, they're solid, they're okay. So, the Palace Chronicles, I was just talking to somebody not long ago about this. I just, within the last year, I'm thinking about 6 months ago, read Just Ella. And thank you for destroying the Cinderella story for me. And that's not a bad thing. It really isn't. I'm laughing.
In a good way,
In a good way. And because my oldest daughter read that in like 2 days, and then she's like, Mom, you have to read this. And I was like, doing 20 things at once. Finally, I think it took me a couple weeks. I did, and I couldn't put it down. And then I was like, wow, why didn't I think of this? So you've got, I just read the third one too, is the 12 Dancing Princesses. Is there more after that? I should have looked.
Oh, there are only going to be 3.
There are only going to be 3 of them?
Palace of Mirrors, Palace of Lies.
Okay. I thoroughly enjoyed that. So tell my viewers about those.
Well, that is a series. It starts out with, the first one is a takeoff of the Cinderella story. And it's basically kind of Cinderella taking control of her own destiny. And realizing that when you agree to marry someone that you've only known for, a couple hours at a dance, you're perhaps not getting the true view of what it would be like to be married to that person. So she gets to the ball on her own, and then she gets the marriage proposal, and she accepts it, but then life in the palace is not quite exactly what she expects it's going to be, and she has to figure out what to do next.
Yes. That is just such a fun series. Even how they are intertwined, because even in the third, you're going back to that.
Right.
And I really enjoyed that. And then the Missing Children, I just talked about, but the Shadow Children series. I read all those too. See, I wasn't joking when I said I was.
You have read a lot.
Was not joking. That's a really interesting, because dystopian novels are so, and I wouldn't really call it a dystopian novel, but kind of, it's this idea of the government controlling, and you can only have one child, and it's about,
you can have 2. It's just you can't have that third.
It was all about, what about these third children and their journey. And so how did you come up with that?
Well, it was because my husband and I were deciding whether or not we should have a third child, because we had 2, and it was that, it had been an easy decision to have one, it had been an easy decision to have the second, but then it was, will we be outnumbered?
Yes.
Well, yeah, we would be, but could we cope? And so we were kind of discussing all of that and bringing in all the variables we could possibly think of that might affect our decision. And one of them was the fact that in some places in the world, there are restrictions on how many children people are allowed to have. And you kind of look at stats, and children in the United States tend to use up more of the world's resources than people in a lot of other parts of the world. And so was it wrong of us to be having these children, or a third child? And somehow, even though I had known about particularly the one-child rule that China had at that time, I had known about that for a long time. But thinking about that type of restriction in the context of my husband and me making a very personal decision about the size of our own family and what we wanted, and you know, kind of that huge divide between thinking we had the power and the right to make that decision ourselves, and in China that is not the viewpoint.
Oh.
And so it was just thinking about that in a different context, and it was like I could picture this boy Luke, who was a child in a place where people were only allowed to have 2 kids, and so he'd had to hide his entire life. And I was thinking about what that would be like, and I wanted to write the book.
You know, I was asked once in an interview how much of my own writing was biographical, and I laughed at that because I've thought about it through the years, and I don't know how you can be a writer and not. I mean, how much it just tends to be based off of your own life,
right?
Even though it's not.
Right. I mean, I didn't have to hide a child.
Yeah, I know, but even though it's not, but it's like it comes out of these random thoughts, you know, random biographical, you know. Can you see yourself in some of your characters?
Yeah, I definitely, more so in some than in others. I would like to say the brave, heroic ones. Yes, I'm exactly like that. The evil villains, not so much.
No, not at all.
But the truth is, you have to be able to relate to a character to a certain extent to be able to write about that character.
Absolutely.
So I kind of think of it as a matter of degree, that I might be, you know, maybe 1% selfish and greedy and unpleasant, but the villain in any of my books might be 99% like that. But because I'm 1%, I can understand enough to write the 99%. So yeah, I feel definitely a kinship with all of my characters.
So,
and sometimes it's fun to write ones that are very
This is true. I don't know about you, but I have found myself, people that I know, whether I will never admit to this openly or not, have become characters. Because it's like, even if it's the way you perceive them, it's sometimes really fun to kind of the makes them a character. You know, the nuances that they are. So what are you working on these days?
Well, what I'm working on right now is a young adult novel that's called Summer of Broken Things. And I was actually writing very dramatic scenes today, but that book will not be out until 2018.
Yeah.
So I kind of hesitate to talk about it too much. It is, I'm really enjoying writing about it. It's about these 2 girls who go to Spain and find out a secret about themselves. So that's kind of a little teaser, but I can tell you a little bit more about kind of my newest books and what I have coming up. And I did actually anticipate this, so I brought, picked up the book. So this is, let me see if I can do this right. This is Under Their Skin.
And I'm gonna flash that too after our
okay, good.
For it. So yes.
And that is the newest book that I've had
Very
come
cool.
out. It came out just January of 2016. And it is about these 2 kids named Nick and Aaron, whose mother tells them that she's getting remarried. And of course, they're trying to figure out how that is going to affect them, because that's what really matters. And she says, it's not going to be that big a deal, because we will have to move, but you'll still go to the same school, you can still have the same friends. And they're thinking through what else happens to kids when their parents get remarried. And they say, well, at least we're not going to have a new stepbrother or stepsister or anything like that, right, Mom? And she does not say right. She says, oh, actually, you will have a new stepbrother and a new stepsister. But don't worry, you'll never have to meet them. And so from that very bizarre situation, they, of course, are desperate to find out why they're not allowed to meet this new stepbrother and stepsister. And they do find out the reason, and it is very strange and very unexpected. And it's connected to the fate of the entire world.
Huh.
So nothing big.
Nothing major. That's fun.
So that is the first book in what they call a duology, a 2-book series. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a weird word. But the second book will be coming out next April.
Okay.
April 2017. And I actually have what it will look like.
That's so cool.
And over their head.
Neat.
And So that's what that will look like. But before that, I have another series that's starting. I have a book coming out in September that's kicking off a trilogy, and it is called Children of Exile, and they played around with the cover quite a bit. So I don't actually have an arc that has the right cover on it, and actually this is a little bit mangled, but this is sort of what the cover will look like.
Neat.
And that's it. And Children of Exile is about these kids who are being raised in basically an entire community made of foster families. That all of them are being raised by adults who are very caring adults, but they all know these are not our actual biological parents. And every single time they say, well, why can't we just have stayed with our biological parents or with our real parents? They're told it wasn't safe. That's all they're told. So then when the two oldest kids in the community have just turned 12, suddenly they are all sent back home to live with their parents. And they don't know why they were taken away in the first place. They do not know why they're being sent back, but they are desperate to find out.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, I look forward to that personally because that's just fun.
Yeah.
But that is just so. What advice? Because I get a lot of people, and I know I get this all the time personally. So I'm sorry that you probably repeat yourself a dozen and a half times.
Okay.
But I get a lot of people that want to write a book and want to get published, talking to me, and you are just so awesome and amazing. And so, what advice do you give to people about writing?
Well, I kind of feel like it's almost two different things. That how do you write and how do you get published?
It is.
There's a lot about writing that is write what you care about. And a lot of times people feel like they can't write what they care about, or they can't write the way they want to write if they're going after that brass ring of getting published. And so I think you have to decide what your real goal is.
That's good.
If you are looking to be the next J.K. Rowling and to be one of the richest people in the world, that is not a good reason to start writing, because your odds of succeeding at that are, I mean, there's only one J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe there's J.K. Rowling and Stephen King, but that's still only two out of the entire population of authors in the world. So that's really not the motivation you should have.
I agree.
I think you have to care a lot about words and the thoughts that you want to express when you're writing. I think you have to care about your audience and not write down to them or talk down to them or be scornful of them. I'm always distressed when I run into somebody who says, oh, yeah, you know, I decided to write a kid's book. I don't really like kids, but it seems like it'd be really easy. Or you know, like, I'm going to write a romance novel because, you know, those are just fluff. Who cares? And that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, don't do it unless you really care. And that, you know, don't do anything unless you really care.
I love what you said in your bio. I was talking to my daughter about this, and she's like, oh, Mom, we need to make a meme of that. You said you decided really early on you're only going to write something that keeps you awake because you were writing when your kids were taking naps, and you really should have been napping as well. So if it didn't keep you awake, you weren't going to write it.
Right.
I thought, that is such a good answer.
Well, good.
That was a good answer. I mean, it's true, because if you're not awake as the writer, why do you think the reader is going to be awake? And that poor agent and publisher that's going to go, no.
Yeah.
You know, no. You know, how many no's you get? It's because you have to write. You know, I said you're living your 10 because you found your niche. That's what you're good at. That's your 10. And you have to do what makes you wake up and live. Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope y'all, as my listeners, enjoyed this wonderful time. Please go out and get these books because she is awesome. And I want to thank you for tuning in. And I want you all to remember that God has awesome plans for your life. So please get excited. Thanks for watching.